All right, so the purpose of this call, as you guys know, we are coming down to, for many of us, we're coming down to the last 3 months of Foundations One. I honestly can't believe that we're that far into this thing. And so what we're hoping is that you're beginning, if you haven't already, you're beginning to start to think, what happens after Foundations One finishes in May? Um, and how am I going to be guiding uh, the people that I'm mentoring into Foundations Two or into new leadership? Or there's a lot of questions that you might have on how to lead your participants forward through these last 3 months, and then what happens in the summer and beyond. So there's a couple things that I want to cover tonight. The first two I think I can get through pretty quickly. Most of our time tonight is going to be on the idea of how we're going to guide participants forward through the remaining part of Foundations One into the summer and then into Foundations Two. So we'll start real quick with the celebration event. Now, we were formally calling this the celebration retreat. It can still be oh, I went too far. It can be still be a retreat, or it could be a dinner that you have. It could be a 2 hour gathering, a little award ceremony. All we're asking is that you have a special set aside time to celebrate the 9 month journey. And so this is not going to be a formal event like you did for the launch retreat, where we had videos that we wanted you to show and different activities and discussion and all of that. It's not going to be a formal packaged event that we send you. This is really, however, because to be honest, all of the different churches that are participating in VLE are all in different situations. You have one church that they have 3 participants, and each participant has their own mentor. You have some churches that have like 30 participants with 4 or 5 mentors. And so we have a really wide range of the way each church is structured for all of the mentoring. So this is an event that we actually just want you to make your own. Um, we want for you to make it fun, to celebrate the 9 month journey. And I would really encourage you to also acknowledge any like big growth that you've seen, leadership advancements. Maybe in this 9 month journey, there have been some people that have advanced to a higher level of leadership. And that would be a great time to celebrate that and acknowledge it. I would also say, we were just talking about this today, is that we will be able to send you certificates of completion. So we'll be sending those to you. It'll be signed by Jay and myself, and then you'll be able to sign it. But we just want this time to be just a fun, celebratory time where you gather together and celebrate that 9 month journey. So again, nothing formal, but that's really all we would expect of you, is to end the 9 months with celebration. Okay. Does anyone have any questions? If you do, like, unmute and just shout out a question before I move on. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, but all right. The next thing I wanted to cover, so the celebration event should be like May or June. You may want to finish up the module in May and finish up your discussions and then do the celebration in June. That is totally fine. But the next thing I wanted to talk about is how to keep participants who are moving into Foundations Two, how to keep them engaged. Because again, that's a 9 month journey. For some, this has been like they've had to build a new routine of life to be able to participate in the ways that you've set up. So we want to really make sure that throughout the summer that there's some kind of engagement with those that are moving on to Foundations Two. And I would say, however you personally, as their mentor, as the person that's facilitating all of the VLE stuff at your church, that there is a way that you keep that bridge there between May and September. that is a pretty long amount of time where people can become disengaged, where people can become disinterested or think, you know what, I'm going to wait till next year to do this. And so I would just encourage you during the summer, find ways to have fun get-togethers. It could be let's meet at Starbucks for coffee on this Saturday morning. It could be, hey, we're having a pool party at our house. Or it could be like, let's get together for game night or barbecue or whatever. So just, I'm not saying like to do a monthly thing or anything, but just if you can schedule like a couple of times where those that you're mentoring that you can get together with them. And I would also encourage a summertime one-on-one. Just if you can make the time to do a coffee or have them over for dinner and really just check in with them, how has your summer been, and maybe even talk through some of the things that you left off on in May, and then maybe even point towards September when we kick off Foundations 2. And then finally, I would just say, come July and August, begin to build anticipation for Foundations 2. Um, you know, we will be sending out lots of information around that time. And you will likely be able to even preview the LMS and see the material that's there. And so as we begin to send you information, you'll also want to be building anticipation with those that are moving on to Foundations 2. One more quick thing, and I don't know if this is a question, but just to clarify, we do expect that anyone that is coming into Foundations 2 has completed Foundations 1. It really is set up to be a part 2, and not a like not to say, hey, you're at this level of leadership, so you can skip Foundations 1. That's not how it works. Anybody that is coming into Foundations 2, we want to make sure that they have completed Foundations 1. And by completed, they have done the work. They've done, all of the assignments. They've come to the meetings and they've been engaging. That will be something that you'll need to be thinking through. Like I wouldn't, if I were you, I wouldn't give someone a certificate that hasn't done any of the work. So that'll be something to be thinking about in lines of which we'll get more into who is moving into Foundations 2. So what I want to spend most of our time on tonight is how to guide your participants forward throughout the final 3 months of Foundations 1 into the summer, into Foundations 2. So this will really be a time where you are assessing in your time with them, in your meetings, even in the engagement on the LMS, or even their performance as a leader in your church. You're going to want to be thinking about who is stagnant, who is stuck, who is not really going anywhere, and who is advancing and making progress, and who have you seen growth in. And these are really some of the things that you're going to need to be thinking about as you're deciding who is moving on to Foundations 2. Now, ideally, in our mind, ideally, all of your Foundations 1 participants would move on. But we know that that's not reality. We know that for some, they're going to say, you know what, that was a lot. And I think I'm good. And they may kind of back out from this point. But our ideal situation would be that they would continue on in their development and they would continue to receive this incredible Vineyard teaching, and then also all the foundations of what does it mean to be a Vineyard leader, to be, know, and do. And so, again, we would love to see everyone move on, but there may be some that are just not cut out for this work. And so this may be a hey, it's been great, but let's not, you won't be moving on to Foundations 2. And then there may be some that are for the sake of their own routines that they just don't have the time for anymore, that there may be a backing out there. But again, I would urge you to encourage everyone to keep going and to finish out the 9 months of Foundations 2. There's 3 things that I'd love for you to consider as you're guiding participants forward. And I'm going to take these 3 things, we'll break it down. these are things that I would love for you to think about. And not necessarily, I'm not going to say that you and your mentors need to assess all of these areas in every participant and and make sure that they're all hitting the mark in every single area. That's not what I'm asking of you right now. What I'd like for you to do is to consider these three areas and really let it be a springboard for you to think about with your mentees, where they're at, and really just how to really emphasize growth in these last 3 months and moving into Foundations 2. So we're going to talk about the leadership pathway, which you've probably heard me talk about before. But just again, we'll kind of really quickly go through that and how you can apply it to your participants. I also want to talk about leadership experience, and getting those that are participating in VLE that they have an opportunity to participate in leadership within your church. I am well aware that there are some churches, and every single one of their participants are current leaders, with some leaders who've been leading for a long time. There are other churches that have all 20 somethings in VLE. I've even heard of some churches bringing youth into VLE, which is amazing. But what we're really going to push for in these last 3 months is, if you have people that are not currently leading in any capacity, we want to talk about what would it mean to give them some kind of leadership experience. And then finally, the last area I want to talk about are these 3 C's. These are just they're 3 areas that you can be developing individuals on. And we'll go through each one and talk about what that might look like. So the first thing I want to talk about is the leadership pathway. Again, you should be familiar with this. This is a very general sense of how someone in your church can move into greater levels of leadership. Ultimately, anyone that's leading others should have a really good grasp on leading themselves. They are spending daily quiet time with the Lord every day. They are reading their Bible. They have a prayer life. They are practicing humility. There's ways that they are leading themselves, and that they are to be able to lead others. We want to see that they can actually lead themselves, that there are spiritual disciplines active, and that others can actually look to them and learn from them by the way that they're leading themselves. A lot of what we're covering in Foundations 1 speaks to leading self. And so you have an opportunity for those that are who have been going through some of this material, spiritual formation, emotional health, and things like that, that you can have a conversation with someone who is leading themselves, that maybe they might consider stepping up to lead others, to be a small group leader, or to lead this team that really needs a leader. And so, again, as you're looking at this pathway, I would encourage you, for every person that you mentor, whether you mentor 4, 3, 10, 20, whatever amount that is, I actually would have you look at this pathway and map out where the people are, where they fall in that. And then again, in these last 3 months, you're going to be thinking, is there anyone that's actually ready to advance to the next step in leadership? Someone who has been an excellent small group leader for the last 2 years, perhaps they would be able to step up and coach 3 other small group leaders. Or there's someone who has been faithfully leading the hospitality team, and you know what? They actually could coach 3 other teams to just be, or team leaders to be better leaders. So I would just encourage you again, for these last 3 months, that you're thinking through where people fall in the pathway, and is there a way that we can begin encouraging them to advance to the next step. It may not be for a while, and that's okay, but it's very good for you to be mindful of where your people sit on that pathway. So again, just some of the questions that you should be thinking about on the pathway is, do you have a vision for the individual to move further on the pathway? And that's really important. You know, we say a lot, if you see it, say it. Like you should be having these conversations. Hey, I noticed on a Sunday morning that you are working the lobby. You don't have to do that, but I see you praying for people. I see you talking to people. There's a lot of leadership that I see in you. I'd really like you to step up and be, you know, our greeting team leader. So you actually have vision. You actually could see someone advancing on the leadership pathway. But what's equally important is, does the mentee have vision to move further on the pathway? There may be some people that are participating in VLE right now that like literally being a small group leader is all they ever want to do. They don't have any any vision to move forward. They actually have to see it for themselves. So as you are having those conversations, it is really important that God is speaking to them and that they as well have vision for that. And in my experience, most of the time when I have those I see and you conversations, there is a light that comes on. So they may have not seen it before, but when they hear from you that you have vision for them, they begin to see something in themselves that maybe they didn't see before. So those conversations are so crucial. So I would, again, when we're talking about these three areas that you should be thinking about over the next 3 months and towards Foundations 2, leadership pathway is a great conversation starter that you can be having with your participants. Are they ready or is there maybe a growth plan? Like, hey, we want you to apprentice with this small group coach for the next semester, this next small group semester, and then let's talk about after that. Perhaps you will be you can become a coach after that. So that's the first thing. Are we good? If anyone at any time has any questions, feel free to pop in the chat. And Amy and Jessica can alert me and I'd be happy to answer questions at any time. All right, so the second thing I wanted to talk about is leadership experience. Again, we have a very wide range of participants participating right now in VLE. We have a lot of future leaders. We have a lot of not future leaders. We have some emerging leaders and we have current leaders. And so I want to break those down and kind of talk about how to give your people experience in leading at your church. This is one thing that I've actually never shared, but I think this is really important when we talk about the experience piece. As you can see, we have this Venn diagram here. You're already super familiar with the two left side circles, the knowledge and the mentoring. In fact, I've used the language that 40% of VLE is about, you know, the knowledge, the LMS, doing the training online. 60% is the mentoring. And I would actually say that coupled together, the mentoring and experience would be in that 60%, because as people are, as your participants are getting experience in leadership tasks and roles and positions, that there is hopefully you're coming alongside of them and mentoring them through that. But in VLE, if you can have all three of these working at the same time, that is where you are going to find a sweet spot with your participants. If they are actively engaging with the content on the LMS, they're actively engaging in your mentor sessions, and they're actively engaging in leadership opportunities that you've provided for them at church, you will see that there will be transformation and growth. I think I just noticed that there's some chat stuff here. Yes, we have some questions. Okay. Do you recommend the same facilitator for both F1 and F2? You know what, actually, these will all be great questions that I will answer at the end, the ones that are still left. So I will definitely get to those towards the end. Let me get through all of this. Maybe I'll just finish up and then we'll do questions at the end. Okay. So again, we have this sweet spot of mentorship and menteeship in VLE. So you again have all of these three working together, and you will find that you will see the most growth in your participant when all three of these are actively at work. So I want to take the time to talk through this experience piece, leadership experience. So I've broken down for you, again, there's different levels of leadership experience that you can provide for your participants. And again, this would be something that I think you should take some time, or the mentors should be taking time to think through everyone they're mentoring and to kind of map out where they fall in this, what is the word I'm looking for? This, oh gosh, um, I cannot think, it's not continuum, but spectrum. There we go. Um, so we have future leaders, emerging leaders, and current leaders. Future leaders would be those that are not currently in any kind of leadership. They do not have a leadership role or leadership title, but you see potential in them, and you'd actually like to mentor them into a place where they can become a leader. The second category would be emerging leaders. These are newer leaders. They're very fresh leaders, maybe your 20 somethings, those that you're beginning to train to step up. And then you have your current leaders. We do have a lot of churches where all of the participants are current leaders in the church, which is great. What I'd like for you to do with your participants, kind of think through where someone falls in those three categories. And again, if you have some people that are participating in Foundations One that are not future leaders, that is a question that you should be thinking about. Should they continue into Foundations Two? And it might be like it's just not their time. It could be that they just don't have the time to put into it. It could be that they've got some things to work out. Whatever that is, if they are not on this, uh, this spectrum here, then maybe that is a conversation that you would have, that they are not to move on at this time. But let me just walk through each one. These are different levels of leadership experience that you can give your participants on Sundays, in small groups, and outreaches. I would say with future leaders, you don't want to like push them straight into leadership, but what you can do is give them some leadership tasks. So if they are coming to this monthly outreach, you're feeding the homeless at the local shelter. Maybe for the next 2 months, you delegate the leadership task of um, sending out the schedule, and you give them clear what you're asking them to do. And when you give them the leadership task, you actually are going to follow up with them, and you're going to talk about it. How did they do? Did they accomplish it? Did they nail it? Did they fail at it? You're going to come around and talk. But it's this idea of giving them, delegating some leadership tasks to get some practice. Again, this is where they're at. So you don't want to push them into a huge role before they're ready. So if they are future leaders, you see a lot of potential in them, begin to give them some, give them some tasks, some leadership, not just like to do things, like not grunt work necessarily. Give them a way to lead something small. And when we're looking at the leading piece, they're leading with you. So, if you're leading this outreach, you're feeding the homeless, you're still the leader. You have not given them leadership of the team, so they are leading with you. So as you give them these tasks, they are leading with you. Dave Ferguson, in his book Hero Maker, has this whole idea of apprenticeship. And the way that it goes is I do, you watch, we talk. You do, I help, we talk. You do, I watch, we talk. And then finally, you do, and somebody else watches. So I've kind of put those into this chart so you can see where that falls. So with future leaders, as you're delegating these leadership tasks, then you're probably going to say, hey, watch me do this first. Okay, you saw the email I sent out. Did you notice how I started it with a cheerful greeting, and then I gave the details, and I put the people, I gave specific job assignments. Did you notice all of those things? And they're going to say, oh yeah, I did. I loved how you cast so much vision in the email. And then you followed up on Sunday morning. I was watching the way that you were talking to some of the group, and you're going to talk about it. And then When you see that they've got it from what they've watched you do, then you're going to let them do it and you're going to help them. So, they're going to say, "Hey, I've got that email ready to go. You want to take a look at it before I send it out?" And you're going to help. "Oh, yeah, this looks great. I love what you said here. Oh, don't forget that this position needs to take care of this. Okay, looks good. You can send it out." And then once it's sent out, you're gonna come back around and talk about it. How did that feel? Did you feel like it accomplished what we needed it to? And maybe even circle back after the outreach and say, did you cover everything in that email? There's just a lot of great ways that you can walk them through these different levels of apprenticeship. Um, then emerging leaders. Speaking of apprenticeship, we have this would be where you actually, I'm going to take a small group for as an example. You are a small group leader and you have someone in your small group that has been great at discussions. You've noticed that they are so good at greeting people when they walk in. They have interacted with the kids. They've really shown a lot of potential. And so what you would do is have this conversation with them. "Hey, would you consider being my apprentice for the rest of the semester?" And what that means is that you're going to actually begin to give them leading opportunities with you close by. You're actually going to allow them to do the leading and you're going to be close by to help them. So if you can see that there's actually between you do, I help, we talk, that's both in future leaders and emerging leaders. But what's going to be the springboard here is when you actually allow them to do it and you are just watching, that you're not helping them this time. You say, "Hey, this next small group, you are going to do everything. You're going to send out the email before a group. You're going to lead the meeting. You're going to make sure that refreshments are taken care of. I'm going to watch and then we'll talk next week on how you feel that it went." Then you have current leaders. So many of you have current leaders that are participating in VLE. And so at this point, you're not apprenticing them anymore. They're already leading, but you're functioning in their lives as a mentor, as a coach. But at this point, they're leading on their own. They don't need you to be close by. They don't need you to, help them all the time. They actually can do a great job on their own. And so at this point, you're encouraging your current leaders to do it and then to bring someone in to watch them. And if you see how that goes, is by this point, current leaders should be raising up future leaders and apprenticing emerging leaders. So these are all of this is what when we talk about the experience part of VLE, we've got the knowledge piece on and the content on the LMS and any of the books that they're reading. They've got the mentoring, the one-on-one, the groups, but this leadership experience is really a piece that I want you to really be thinking about in these final 3 months. How can we actually develop them in their leadership experience? Okay, the final area is the 3 C's that of leadership development that I want to talk about tonight. These are 3 areas that I'm sure all of you guys are well versed in. But these are just, again, when we talk about areas that you can be guiding and leading and mentoring your folks in on top of the content that they're getting on the LMS. I would love for you to be thinking about culture, character, and competencies. So I'm just going to run through each of those, break it down. Carey Nieuwhof says that mission is what you do, vision is what you see, but church culture is how your church feels. It's the unspoken rules, the vibe, and the climate of your church experienced by members, staff, and visitors. So, VLE is designed to help you raise up leaders. But you're also, as you're raising up leaders, you're actually establishing a culture in your church. Because I can tell you right now that the culture of your leaders will be the culture of your church. So if you have a very generous culture, if you have a very friendly culture, authentic culture amongst your leaders, you will see that in the rest of your church. And so this is something that really can bring vitality and life to your church as you are mentoring. You have these one-on-one meetings with your participants. You have these group meetings. This is a place for you to establish culture in your church by developing these leaders. And so, I would just encourage you to be thinking about, if this is not something you've ever thought about before for your church, how would you want people, the members of your church, the staff of your church, and the guests of your church to feel when they encounter your Vineyard Church? What is that essence of your church that you want them to encounter? A lot of us, like, I could go to a lot of our websites and we might say what we envision, but would we walk into your church and actually see that in action? Because it's not what you've posted up on your wall. It's not what's up on your website. Culture is actually what is felt in the atmosphere when your church people are together. So with establishing culture, these are some of the things you can be thinking about as you are mentoring and coaching your participants. First of all, this hands down, you will not establish a healthy culture if you are not modeling the culture that you want to see. So if you want the culture of your church to be generous, then you've got to be modeling generosity with your time, with your treasure, with your talent. They need to see that in you. This is so, so important. The second thing with establishing culture is that you're going to protect the culture you want to keep. Again, in these conversations and mentoring meetings and one-on-ones that you're having, if you see unhealthy culture in someone that you're mentoring, you have to call them out on that. Hey, I noticed that you completely ignored multiple guests that walked in you were standing right by the door and they just walked by. You didn't even see them because you were so engrossed in a conversation with your buddy. So you have to call things out when you see the culture threatened. You actually have to call things out to protect that culture that you want to keep. So again, in conversations with your participants, these are things that these are ways that you can help develop them by protecting the culture that you want to keep. And then finally, when you see healthy culture, you want to celebrate it. In your team huddle on a Sunday morning, call someone out, say, I noticed so and so is cleaning up trash in the bathroom. No one asked them to do it. They did it on their own. Let's give it up and celebrate it. When you're in your mentor groups, that you're actually like calling people out, celebrating when you've seen healthy culture. If you can do these three things, you will build such a beautiful culture if you see this in your leadership. The leaders go first. So if leaders are living out the culture that you want to see, then the church will follow. So the second C is developing character. Now, this is something that can coincide with all the stuff that we're doing content-wise and your mentoring. But what I would say is when we talk about developing character, this really is a lot of the inward work. And we could do a quick survey of the Bible and quickly come up with godly biblical character traits, which I have for you right here. Just some things that you can see in the Bible: faithfulness and trust in God, integrity and honesty, humility and servanthood, love and compassion, patience and self-control, obedience and faithful living. So you have these character traits. They're all godly traits. You see this in the life of Jesus. You see this in the life of leaders throughout the Bible. And so these are just things that we should be thinking about when it comes to the character of our leaders, and really calling out and, in sometimes holding accountable to, and in sometimes praising and encouraging and developing even further. Um, and so I would say as you're working on developing character, there's a couple of things that, we already covered in the culture piece, but again, lead by example. You show the kind of character that you want people to emulate. You live it out. Talk about it. Talk about these areas. Again, you have, love and compassion. If you see one of your leaders who has not been exhibiting love and compassion, that would be a great conversation starter. Um, one tool that I want to share with you guys, we'll put it up in the chat. We have this self-assessment that's just an easy, hey, talk to your participants, have them fill this out just as a, hey, we're going to be having a one-on-one in the next couple of months, and I would love to talk about this assessment that you have done on character. And just it's something that you can print out. And all of the areas that I just listed on the last slide, the participant can actually rate themselves from 1 to 5 and where they feel they fall. And it will give even some biblical context to these character traits. But again, a great conversation starter. If you see that some are falling below, falling under the desired score, and if you see that some are, exceeding in some areas, again, if you see it, say it. Like if you see weakness, call it out, not in a derogatory way, but you call it out so that you can help develop them in that area. If you see strengths, celebrate it, praise them for it, encourage them even more in it. And then finally, there is nothing that will forge your character than when you are facing a hard, when you're in a season of suffering. And so as you're developing character in your participants, you're going to have to walk through challenges and hard times and seasons of suffering. But that is the time where you will see either character is made or destroyed. That's where true character can really be strengthened. Finally, the last C is enhancing their competencies. So you have culture, you have character, and you have competencies. These are the competencies of being a good vineyard leader. What does it take to like what do we want our vineyard leaders to be competent in? And so these are just the ones that come out of Foundations 1. Of course, you have all the qualities of vineyard DNA. You've got the self-discovery, self-awareness. I know how I'm wired. I know my personality. I'm aware of my spiritual gifts, and I'm aware of that. So now I can actually lead from that place. Stewardship, emotional health, spiritual formation, kingdom theology, kingdom ministry, disciple making, developing leaders, and building a healthy team culture. So these are just all areas that again, you don't want to just be having conversation about the content, but you want to be having conversation about how this is lived out in real life, which is the beauty of the activation assignments. So if you're not utilizing that tool to really bring out and encourage growth and competencies, I would highly, highly encourage you to really dive into those activation assignments. Those are uh, a phenomenal way to be able to gauge where they are in some of these areas. That is it for as far as as we're moving towards Foundations 2, like what are some of the areas that you should be thinking about? Again, before we move on, I'll just go back to this just so you don't get lost. Before we move on to who moves on to Foundations 2, I again want to say I just covered a lot and I am fully aware of that. I am not saying that you better get out a checklist and mark all of these off for every single participant. All I'm trying to do is to give you a basis for conversation and a basis for helping your participants to grow in themselves, to grow in their leadership, and to grow in all of these things that we talked about. So again, take and leave whatever you feel is helpful. But these are just, I wanted to be able to provide you with some ways that you can be thinking through what does advancement look like for your leaders. So Foundations 2 is coming up in September. We are in the throes of building all of the content for that. In fact, we have most of our modules are already fully developed. Right now, what's happening is we have a team that's watching through a lot of the practice videos and reading through outlines, and we're reviewing all of the content. From there, we'll send some recommendations back to our presenters, and then we will ask them to revamp or revise what what we've given to them. And then in April, we will be filming all of our videos for Foundations 2. So just to give you that update, we are working towards an incredible, it's going to be really, really good. I'm really excited about what's coming. And maybe once I click out of this share screen, I'll be able to give you some of the